Hello and welcome to another episode of the Body Mind Index. I'm your host, Jerry Pujals. Today, I'm extremely privileged and excited to announce this guest. My guest is Guy Gal. Guy is the co-founder and CEO of Site Inc. For those of you that don't know what Site is, Site is a white label platform that over 500 real estate companies across the US use to improve their systems and methodologies in running a real estate practice. This company is currently valued at over $2.5 billion, and it was the brainchild of my friend Guy Gal. Guy is an extremely complex individual with a broad mind and a real inspiration to all things human and human behavior. I find Gal to be deep and thoughtful in everything that he says and everything that he does. So I am fortunate to get to share space with Guy. I hope you get something out of the time that I spend with him. It is my longest podcast yet. Went over 2 hours and it felt like 15 minutes. So hopefully you pick up some of what I got from the time shared with this special individual who I, again, get to call my friend. I'm looking at my notes to make sure that I don't leave anything out. I wanted today's introduction to be authentic and from the heart because Guy deserves nothing but that. So I sincerely hope you find today's information valuable and the time that I spend with Guy useful in some aspect of anything that you may be going through. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Please give us any comments on the comments box below. And if you find our information useful or valuable to you, please give us a like and a subscribe as this helps us grow our audience and we'd appreciate it. That's all I have to say about that. I hope you enjoy today's episode with Guy Gal.
Lift off in 3, 2, 1.
This young man, probably 29, same age as Jerry Jr., 29 years old, is built, it's got a physique that, I don't find men particularly attractive, but he is one specimen, and I've known him for years. He's super analytical and can get very granular. So the other day I'm at Whole Foods getting my groceries for the way that I'm eating now, and I run into him and we start talking about all that, and clearly you can see that this guy eats right and this guy does everything right. And he says, "Oh, Jerry, I'm just working on this projection. I saw that you did Mount Whitney. I want to go do Mount Whitney, but I have all these variables and I want to do it in a certain amount of time.
Yep.
And I want to do it. I want to sort of break a record. I'm looking at the records and I want to see if I can break the record."
Overwhelming.
You know what I just looked at him. You know what I said to him? "Sean, why don't you just go tomorrow? Go do Mount Whitney.
Let's go.
Just go do Mount Whitney."
One step.
Yeah, and it was as if somebody gave him permission. He looked at me. He says, "Oh my God, you're right. Why do I keep doing this? Just go."
You lifted the weight of all analysis. Some people are really wired that way.
He's wired that way.
Yeah.
Oh no, you should have seen the spreadsheet. I mean,
Yeah.
I say Edisham on the other side of the camera lives and breathes spreadsheets, and he can build them, twist them, bend them, do whatever he wants
Yeah.
with a spreadsheet. He can read them, which is so much more than I could do, because to read a spreadsheet, he literally dumbs it down to where I'm a kindergartner looking at color-coded little places. He can tell.
He explains it to you like you're 5.
Oh, barely. And this poor young man, Sean, has to make everything so granular to feel like he's got a purpose as to why he's doing it.
Yeah, and in doing that, you often prevent yourself from doing the things you want to do in the first place because you create a really high barrier by which to start. And I can relate to that my own way with like the food, right? Or with, physical health. It's like oh, okay, well, all these stars need to be aligned before I can start on this path again.
Yeah.
And then that's just such a high bar that you never ever meet it. You're self sabotaging without realizing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people, I mean, statistically, if we're going to dive into that, I didn't know where we're
We can
going
dive anywhere, we can dive into anything. That's so much to dive
to
into.
cover.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I am pumped, man. I say before we go into that, I say these podcasts have been such an indulgence of a moment spent.
Mm.
If
Mm.
yeah,
That's a
and
lovely thing to say.
yeah, it's been yeah, you get it. So I'm thankful that you would be the person that gets that that understands what I just said. It's been I've been calling it a selfish moment, but people have suggested that I don't call it that because there's also a need of the moment to be shared and hopefully somebody gets something out of the moment.
Yeah.
So maybe it takes a little bit of the selfish, but now I think it's an indulgence. It's what I look forward to the most.
It's a better word.
Yeah.
Like, is it selfish to eat ice cream or is it an indulgence?
It's an indulgence. So you just helped me literally by having you next to me, I get smarter. I really mean that.
I share that sentiment, Jerry.
Well,
Seriously.
I just all of a sudden went. This moment is an indulgence. It's like ice cream. It's like eating ice cream. It's
Yeah.
like I was looking forward to it on the drive here. I've been looking for it, and you're so busy that I would never judge you if you ever had to move or cancel or something like that. So that wouldn't have surprised me, and I would have been totally okay with it because I know how insanely busy you are. But the moment is an indulgence, and it's calorie free.
It's calorie free.
It's calorie free.
And it's really tasty.
It's,
It's really tasty.
so thank you.
I, you know, I talk about this a lot. It's an ongoing theme for me in my life, and it's just like there's no such thing as finding time. If you think about your relationship with the rest of the world, with others, with your time as always needing to find the time, you never will have any of it. Uh, you really have to make the time, and like finding the time is very capricious. It is much more disposable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I found some time, but oh, it's 5 minutes before that time, and now I don't have it anymore. So I'm going to not show up for it. Making time is different. It's a commitment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you make time, you make it. Like, I'm making this time for this thing that's important. That you take away your own, like our own human tendency to take the path of least resistance.
You take it away
You
because
take it away.
yeah.
Yeah.
The path of least resistance is usually to cancel.
Exactly. That's totally the path of least resistance. To resign, to not do anything, there's always reasons there's way more reasons to say no than yes, and there's way more reasons not to do something than there is to do something.
Yeah.
And if we allow ourselves to be guided by those instincts, those impulses, it's very hard to make anything that's worthwhile, whether it's, making a company, making a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Making an experience.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that.
How do you? I'm always curious as to how do you stay above the minutia? How do you stay above it? Because you're running. I don't know where you're at now. I know it's over $1 billion company. So
oh yes.
Yeah. So in my world, I see things as stressful at times. I see things as minutia at times, and sometimes it takes you into the wormhole. And one thing that I'm enjoying at this stage in my life, I'm enjoying the periphery. If that makes any sense.
It makes so much sense. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I long for the periphery.
Okay.
Right. Look, the periphery is quite an ideal. where you can just be in this place where you can objectively observe,
Yes.
right? But it's to your question is a really interesting one because it's the answer for me is counterintuitive. Like for me to be able to have the indulgence to work with that, right? The luxury of the periphery, the privilege of the periphery,
Privilege is a great word.
right? The privilege of the periphery.
Yeah.
You always have to be okay being the minutia, and not just that. You have to accept being the minutia, and you have to recognize that they're part of the same living organism. So to have the one, you have to have the other. There is no disconnecting, because if you disconnect from the core, you can't be in the periphery. You drift away. You just are completely untethered at that point. So I like to think about those things as, like when there's a fire, run into it, as opposed to stay in the periphery of it.
Yeah.
Run into it, understand it, contain it,
address it.
The fire of minutia.
Yes.
Right? Address it.
Yeah.
Thrash.
Yes.
Show up. Roll up your sleeves. Break a sweat. And have fun with it. Right?
Yeah.
It's hard. It can be frustrating. It's challenging. It gnaws at you. It grinds. All those things. But if you run into it with enthusiasm, you'll have fun with it. Some of the most fun things that we do in life are things that are very challenging. Like you went and climbed Mount Whitney.
I was just thinking of that.
Right?
Yeah.
That was an extreme challenge.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of preparation. It was just go and
Just
do
go.
the best you can.
Yeah, just run into it.
Just do the best you can.
Run into it. And then when you came out of Mount Whitney, I remember we spoke, and you're like, okay, now that I'm on the periphery, you couldn't ever be in the periphery of Mount Whitney unless you ran into Mount Whitney, right? You come out and you're like, okay, now that I'm on the periphery of this experience, I know how I would do it next time, different and better, so that I won't be as compromised safety-wise. Right? So it's relational. Those things exist in relation. You want the privilege of the periphery, you gotta have the wherewithal and the gumption to embrace the minutia. Right?
The grind.
The grind, yeah.
The grind is real.
The grind is real.
Yeah.
I say this to entrepreneurs, whether they're real estate entrepreneurs, which I'm surrounded by a whole lot of, or tech entrepreneurs, which I'm surrounded by a whole lot of. Like there's no magical bean, there's no silver bullet. If you want to build something great, sustainable, durable, wonderful, it's always brick by brick. It's brick by brick.
So you just came full circle. You did that beautifully.
It's always brick by brick.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just reminds me, I always used to think, how lucky am I that I found real estate and it was sort of a hand in glove fit and I became very successful very quickly. But then I dismissed the 8 years of real estate, wholesale produce industry, graveyard shift, knocking door to door on chefs' doors, dealing with chefs, and that type of sale. And I totally dismissed 8 years of doing that made real estate a hand in glove fit.
Exactly. The thing that actually sets you up to be successful, you discount and dismiss because it maybe wasn't directly tied or directly contributing. But that's how we tend to think about things when we separate it all into categories and pieces. But life is not like that. It's one organism, right? Yeah. It's one thing. Like a lot of people talk about, well, that it's just business and this is life and that's just this. And I don't know how you're
separating it.
I mean, it's a complete illusion to separate business from the rest of life. Like those things are, work from the rest of life. Yeah. It's lies we tell ourselves, lies that sound true, right? Comforting lies, convenient lies that'll give us outs of the maybe tight places we sometimes find ourselves in, the corners, the uncomfortable spots, right? That we would be better served to actually engage in and work through and solve versus just give up on or let go of. But that is an example of that. We as human beings tend to create categories in compartments, and we organize things into them really neatly, and it's completely inconsistent with the actual way that everything truly does work.
That's fascinating, man. Yeah.
It's an imposition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm.
So you brought it up earlier. So talking about the journey of, nutrition, health, things like that, and the
It's the one thing I suck at.
yeah, me too. Me too. Even when I think I may be onto something, it's kind of elusive. It's sort of always a moving thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep learning and educating myself and trying to connect with those things that I can relate with, because it's not a one size fits all, and it's not the same for everybody, and it's not a, hey, guy, just do what I'm doing and it's going to be all right, because there's so much legacy and so much built into the whole thing, and
it's that whole category thing.
It's like, a whole category
this is
thing.
The way to do it, but there's so much nuance, context.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I'm recently going, it might be deeper into the journey, because I just been hitting this plateau. I've gone from almost 200. I might have been over 280 pounds. I just didn't weigh myself anymore until I lost some weight.
That's what I've been avoiding weighing myself for a year.
Yeah,
ever since I started gaining all my weight back.
That was me, and thank you for being vulnerable enough and honest enough to say that, because I don't think I could have said that. When I'm in that period of denial, if we can call it that.
Yeah.
When I was on that period, and I'm calling it denial for me.
Yeah.
It was denial. For me, it was denial. Yeah. It was just, I just don't want to know. I don't want to hear it. I know it's bad. And it was the same thing when I went to the doctor and my blood pressure was up, and she wanted me to come back the next day to see if it magically get better. I know.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna be better. And then you're gonna prescribe me something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be on that path.
I don't want to be on that path, because that is a path, and it's slippery as heck, right?
It only slips.
Yeah.
So it's a crossroad at that point. You have to really.
That was a decision. That was
way?
That was the decision.
Yeah.
100%. So then, I through the journey of cutting out the sugar, oil, salts, animal products, alcohol, and caffeine, which is a mouthful, right? I think most people hear that and they think, oh, okay, so he cut those things out. Well, the smart people will say, what's left? The other people say, oh, that's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
That's only 4 or 5 things. Yeah. The 4 or 5 things cover almost everything.
They cover so much.
Especially in the way of processed, and the way of things that satiate our palates, and things that engage the
rich things,
the dopamine charges that we get, and
the food drugs.
The food drugs. Because this all started in the 70s. It was the food drugs that were created, and this is not what we did
like
towards
crackers. Kind of like crack.
It's like crack, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, it's like one little bite. Like, oh, you gotta have more.
I knew I really had a problem. I'm going to digress a lot, so I hope people can.
Yeah, we'll bounce around.
Okay, so my son's wife, Sierra, made these cookies, and I'm at his house, and I grabbed one, and they were like, for me, they were this big, but that was a mouthful.
Yeah.
So that was one bite, which is for most people it's 3 bites. For me, it's one bite. And I just put one bite in my mouth. I was like, wow, these cookies are just amazing. Grab another one. God, they were insane. I got like 3 or 4. By the time I went for the 5th one, my son physically had to grab my hand and say, stop.
You're addicted.
It was that. Yeah. It was that. That was a moment where I was like, somebody had to physically stop me from just putting it in.
Because you can. Your capacity at that point, your agency, your mental capacity, your mental agency is. I mean, that's why I say it's drugs, right? Yeah. You're not yourself.
You're not yourself.
You're rabid.
And which is why I find fascinating that some of the people that I'm surrounded by that are super bright in the field, they really let us off the hook, which makes me feel good. They say, this is not you. This was done to you. by your environment. Your environment is your environment.
Yep.
And the challenge a lot of times is the environment.
It is.
Dr. Doug Lyle, who I've had on the podcast, psychologist in the space, evolutionary science, and he definitely says that this was done to us by creating a
I watched
yeah.
that
He's
part. That was really great.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that was very insightful.
I'd love for you to talk to
Yeah.
him. He'd make himself available for you. He'd be a great guy for you to talk to, because he'll just call BS on a lot of stuff that we've been told or that we blame ourselves for.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think that we underestimate how much of an impact the structural things have on us. The structural way, the way in which life is structured, society is structured, our systems are all structured. It's got a great deal of influence, aka your environment. I mean, during the pandemic, the lockdowns, lost 80 pounds.
I saw it.
Right, I lost 80 pounds.
Oh, it's fascinating. It was
in under a year. And it was entirely attributable to the fact that we weren't leaving our houses that whole time, and I had control. So I only had certain things at home and no others, and that made the discipline so much easier because the temptation was not there. I wasn't putting myself in a position where I was making it harder for myself. Quite the opposite. I put myself in a position where structurally, environmentally, I made things as conducive as possible. And my path back to gaining all the weight that I had lost, and then some, was paved by losing that control. It was post-lockdown. Going out and all of a sudden having those 3, 4, 5 lunches and dinners a week, right? And then celebrating and marking all those occasions with feasts, food, right? Camaraderie, drinks. And the next thing you know, a year later, all that progress gets undone. And it was for no other reason than the way that I had things structured changed dramatically again. And this time it wasn't conducive to, eating well or correctly or whatever, however you want to call it.
God, I totally took the pandemic as an opportunity to put on more weight. Unlike you, it was we were huddled down. We lived in 2 flats. My youngest son and his wife and kids lived upstairs, so I had the great fortune of having that nurturing familial environment, and we use cooking and comfort food
totally makes sense
as a way to possibly medicate or possibly soothe some of the pains.
Totally.
So it went the other way for me.
And it's also a medium by which you relate. Right?
Oh, we love cooking.
It creates the space and the time for you to have a reason to be together and talk. I was, that's not the right word, but I would say I was fortunate that I was not living with anyone. So I was able to then take something like food and make it more a means to an end versus way by which I was connecting and relating and having quality time with other people. And obviously my compulsion for that was real strong at the moment that we were able to come back out again. I swung the pendulum in the complete other direction, and it was very easy to lose sight. It happens very gradually. A few months go by, and you're like, wait, did I just gain 15 pounds in the last 3 months? Okay, I need to tone down on having these lunches and dinners. And it's so hard to do that.
I can gain 15 pounds by going to Miami for a weekend.
Impressive.
It's impressive. I can go to Miami, land there Thursday night, get on a plane Monday morning, jump on a scale, and it'll say 12 to 15 pounds just from comfort food. And you say drug, I'm literally stopping at every coffee shop, at
it's
everything that's
compulsive.
familial. Oh my God.
It's compulsive. It's a real compulsion. And in that way, I get when experts, like the ones you know so well, say it's like not your fault in the way that
Correct.
becoming addicted to a opiate, like a real drug,
Yeah.
is like not your fault. It's the byproduct of it's
Yeah.
the effect of the thing that you're taking. Certainly, you have some agency at the beginning of it all when you choose to take it. But man, so many people look at like what's was it Oxy?
Yeah.
Right?
Oxycodone.
You look at Oxy.
Yeah.
Right? The reason that affected and impacted communities in the way that it did is because it came into those communities prescribed by trusted authorities, by doctors,
Yeah.
right? And it created created safe space, a rationale, right, permission space for people who would otherwise never have partaken in opium.
Absolutely.
It's opium, right?
Absolutely.
Never would have partaken in opium to do just that. And so you have a prescription, you go through your prescription, and then you're wondering why you now have this insatiable appetite and hankering for this drug. And in that respect, can you really blame the patient? Can you blame?
Right. I would equate that exactly to food and what happens. It just slides in. I heard on a podcast just yesterday that there are hospitals that have vending machines outside of them with Red Bulls, Cheetos, and a few other things like that. And those are the only food items in the vending machine.
Yeah.
And you think about that, and why is that in a hospital? And is that what you're feeding your staff so they stay up at night a little later and they're amped up? And what's the premise behind that, or the logic behind that?
It's we tend to orient towards our preferences.
Yeah.
And every human being is wired to prefer biologically, and I'm no scientist, but I think this is accurate things to say, is that biologically we're wired towards rich, high calorie.
100%. Dr. Lyle says that.
Yeah.
You're 100% on point.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember that podcast is that is our biology. We're wired towards
path of least resistance, most calories, easiest to consume. That stuff just melts in your mouth. You don't even hardly have to chew it.
You don't have to digest.
It doesn't have to digest. It just goes through, but it does so much damage in the process.
It is especially when it is persistent and constant and all the time.
Especially when it's that.
And 100 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible even if we wanted it to. But now it is, right? Since the 70s, that's become an on-demand thing.
Well, it's funny because people will say, you're not going to die by eating Oreo cookies, or you're not going to die by eating, chips, or you're not going to die potato chips or things like that. You're not going to, you don't die, or maybe they're not even bad for you if you can have just one. Or but that if is so slippery for.
It's like a cigarette. It's not bad for you if you have just one.
Well, and 70% of us are overweight or obese. So 70% of us are
that much, huh? I didn't realize that.
71%, to be precise, are overweight or obese. Out of the 70%, 40% are obese. I'm still falling under the obese category.
You're still falling. You're not.
But you're still falling under the obese category. So I'm such a long ways away from where my healthy body weight is supposed to be, for my joints, for everything to be working optimally, for longevity, for even just everything to be functioning in its right order. So some of us do not call us sick when we're overweight, but doctors that are not ignorant doctors know that we do have a condition when we're this overweight.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny that our system doesn't look at it as a condition yet that should be addressed with nutrition and other things. It doesn't even get addressed that way.
No, it often is seen more through a moral lens. It's like that individuals' bad decisions.
100%.
There's that comedian Bill Burr who does a lot of talks a lot about overweight people,
Yeah.
like fat people, and he's just like, just put the effing cookie down.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
that works.
Yeah,
That's working.
It's just like put the crack pipe down. And I don't want to create false equivalents, but just analogously, it has very similar impact on the way our brain works.
I'll take that bullet because I love having the conversation with anybody like a Bill Burr that would say, put it down. Yeah. Because I've had to have very challenging conversations with Susan. I live somebody that actually struggled in her teenage years with anorexia. So the discussion of changing nutritions and doing are very sensitive topics for her that I was not sensitive to. So when I started in this journey, it's going to be I can't believe we're sitting here today because it's going to be almost a year ago.
I can't believe how much progress you made in
October.
Kudos to you.
October will be a year. And for me, I'm still disappointed that it didn't happen in 3 months. Because we talk about the brick by brick. I was like, wait a minute, I can lose 100 pounds in 3 or 4 months. It should work that way.
Yeah.
So
and now you're disappointed that you've done this whole year, you've lost all this weight. You still have on the obesity scale.
Yes, it messes with my mind.
It messes, and you're like, well, what the heck's the point?
Yeah, right. There's still that label.
Yeah.
There's still that label.
It's like a lifelong addiction struggle, right?
Well said.
Right, like we have a partner. I won't name names because it's not my place. But we have a partner outside who used to drink a whole lot, and now 20 years of sobriety later, he still thinks of himself as an addict, right?
As he should. As he should if he wants to stay good.
If he wants to stay sober.
Yes. Right. And I still think of myself very much as a food addict.
Yeah, it's like that one cookie. That one cookie is.
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
Yeah. Not even can.
You not even can. Yeah, I agree.
It will.
The one that'll do it.
It's you break the dam.
Yeah.
Right? You break the dam.
Yeah.
It's like that one drink. Yeah. It breaks the dam.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard with things like that, because you have, life should be and often is very compromising, right? Where the way to work through life is to be okay with compromise, is to find the compromises. But then there are certain things within life that you just can't compromise with at all, because the implication and the impact is so great.
Well, that was the point that I was going to make about Susan, because at one point when I came to that crossroad with the doctor, I said, I'm making a decision, and here I need your help. I need you to, and she agreed. She agreed because she saw that I was desperate, but when the work began, it was much more uncomfortable, because then it's sort of, it makes it challenging for the other person that now there are no cookies in the house for them.
Yep.
The things that they don't struggle with, they're not available for them to, a glass of wine if she wanted one, or things like that. She had already made a decision to, Susan never drank a lot, but she always, every time she goes from one glass of wine per night to the second one, she just stops drinking altogether. She instinctively does that. She just okay, I'm done.
She's got good inherent discipline.
Yes, she does. Yeah. And but I don't have that with food.
No.
And and we came to some real challenging discussions and moments when it was like, I'm committed to putting my mask on this plane that's going down, so I can be better for you.
Yeah.
Because this husband that you have right here is not optimally the best husband you can have.
Yeah.
And I think we were able to come to terms with that. And then she stayed on the plane with me, because it got really tough.
That's a special thing.
It got really tough for her and for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about relationships is you go through the things together, even when it might just be one person's thing, right? Like when When my partner is going through something that has nothing to do with me, I still experience that with her. And,
Yeah.
and I think just showing up for that in a way that is like engaged and complete and loving and accepting is the only way to do it, because the alternative is you become resentful and contemptuous, and that just erodes the relationship you have in the first place.
Did you take psychology in college or anything like that, or you're instinctively wired that way?
No, I didn't. I did philosophy in college.
Yeah.
And I think philosophy helps you become really objective about the world and more cerebral and
Yeah.
more capable of learning, um, and drawing insight. And it's served me really well because it just created a foundation by which then I could go and understand the world through my own lens, as opposed to downloading books into my brain or whatever the case might be.
Are you by any chance wondering why I'm smiling so hard?
Are you similar?
No, not at all. Not at all. Let's be honest. No, I was just reflecting back on a moment where we were at an event with you one time, and Susan's watching you with this fascination. And I'm like, what are you looking at? She says, just look at guy over there taking notes. And the way you take notes just fascinated her, because you're going through, like, you're putting notes on a page and just putting notes, and you're going like this. And we're just going, so now I have to ask you, what is that style of note taking, man?
Man, I don't even remember
Really?
that.
She's like, he's just writing so insanely fast, and he's just flipping the pages and just writing.
It's interesting you say that, because I've gotten to a point now where I don't need to write a lot anymore, to remember things, or to understand or retain them.
Yeah.
But it used to be that way where I was, I never wanted to miss a thing or not understand a thing or not remember a thing.
Yeah.
And so I would always um, capture with notes. For me, it's never transcript. It's never like word for word.
Yeah. We picked up on that.
Yeah, it's never word for word. It's the big idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot more of a visual. It's like a bubble.
Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah.
A line or the bubble.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. You just
somewhat more of a symbol than even writing.
In college, studying for exams for philosophy and exams history exams, it's a lot of memory retention. It's a lot of just memorizing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So much of school is just memorizing things.
Yeah.
And that came from that, where I was like, okay, I need to remember things in a particular kind of way. So I'm going to create a file, and this file is going to be like this date, this particular date and time. And I know that in this file, these things there are like these 4 things in that file that happened on this date. And you can just drill down and down and down. Nowadays, I don't take, a lot of that note taking and whatnot was an insecurity. It came from a place of anxiety, right? It came from a place of maybe like fear of missing out.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've developed a completely different way of understanding the world, and it started by being comfortable with not knowing all the things, with not having to have all the answers.
Yeah.
With acceptance.
Yeah.
And so today, I'll sit down for an hour and a half, and just talk to myself in my own head. So, say we have a conference and I'm going to be speaking or saying something at it. I'm not writing that down. I'm not putting together a document or committing anything to particular memory in that respect. I just sit there and think about it from first principles, bottoms up, and develop a point of view and an opinion and conviction around that thing. Because you don't have to remember the reason why you believe things. You don't have to remember the opinions that flow from that belief, from those principles, right? Uh, you can. So people often say, "Wow, you flow a whole lot and connect dots. Like, are you preparing? Are you writing these things down?" I'm like, no, it's just the things that I believe, and that informs my point of view, and I can speak to it fluidly because of that. And so I'll sit there for an hour and say, okay, I've got this thing. They're going to ask me this particular question. What's my answer to that? And I'll think all that through. And I won't do anything else. I'll just think all that through. And once I've thought it through and I've developed a point of view,
Wow.
That's how I take notes now.
I love that.
Yeah. That's how I take notes now. There's this, famous musician, rapper, who's notorious for not writing on their lyrics. There's a whole documentary about it. It's quite fascinating, and I think it's a really interesting example of like mastery, where they just will sit there and think through what they want to say. What's my message?
Yeah.
And then they'll figure out the words.
Yeah.
Right? And then they'll put those words into their head. And then they'll go and say the words. And never will they transfer that into written form at all whatsoever. I think all humans have that capacity, but we don't develop it.
I find that so fascinating because I'm connecting with so many things that you're saying, because sometimes I've confused my, maybe, I don't know if we can call it ability. I come from a survival background, right?
Yeah.
And in that survival background, you have to think on your feet. You have to use the right words to get out of situations.
Yes.
You have all that.
High stakes.
Very high stakes.
Yeah.
So people always wondered, how can I walk into, like, for example, in real estate, into a listing appointment without even a business card and beat out 6 other agents, and it's without preparation. But I always, now I'm always thinking about you when it was years of the preparation came.
It was
time of the preparation already came.
It wasn't the ferocious note taking. It was already there.
And the same thing with even these podcasts, because one thing I realized early on, the first one, maybe I was just doing background checks on the person and reading their book or doing this or doing that. And now I know the macro. And now I also know that I'm only sitting with people that I want to be with. So there's none of that happening. It really is just being present in the moment and enjoying the moment, because if I were to do all that pre-work, I think it would change. Don't you think it would change the dynamics?
Absolutely. I was actually talking to someone yesterday, and they were talking about, how they do a lot of coaching, and they always follow every little thing a coach tells them every time, in the context of real estate.
Sure.
They do all the door knocking, the mailing, whatever. But it's just not coming together for them and translating into more meaningful production. And then they said to me, I finally realized what it is that's keeping me back is that I've over-regimented, I'm over-practiced, I'm so robotic, right? Everything is, it's all binary, it's zeros and ones. Like, okay, say this, then say that. If they say this, you say this, you say that, you say this. There's no critical thinking. There's nothing creative about it. It's entirely mechanical. I've made myself into like this robot, this like coached scripting robot. There's no art, and that translates to people. People can feel that. They can feel that. What's most important to us, to every single human, is authentic connection, and trust and confidence.
Yeah.
Transparency and alignment,
alignment,
mutual recognition, and shared values. And we are always looking for simple solutions to complex things. And We do away with all the nuance in an effort to categorize it, right? To fit it into like a neat little box.
Sure.
That we think we can easily rinse repeat, and it's never ever that case, because it's just not how life really is. So for you to be able to go into an appointment with someone without a business card, without the
Bells and
whistles that
Bells
most
and
people bring into
Yeah.
that thing, is just a sign of mastery, right? It's a sign that you are a manifestation of these things already, and you're a representation of them. You are the one that is like, you are the business card, right?
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
the bells and the whistles
Yeah.
inherently yourself.
Yeah. You're the value.
You're the value.
You're the value.
And the relationship is the value.
Yeah.
The relationship is the value.
And that's ultimately, that's literally what happens. You're 100%, is literally the bonding of two souls that literally start to align. And all of a sudden it's like, client, the client says, I want you to help me, but I'm also saying, I want to work with you, because they both have to align. And that's why I try to explain to the younger salespeople in that field, things have to align. You don't have to do every transaction.
Exactly.
You don't.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The formula, the formula is simple, but its manifestation is complex, and you have to embrace that complexity, as opposed to being afraid of it or trying to simplify it.
Yeah.
Because it's odd, because this philosophical concept where simple to arrive at a simple truth requires working through all the complexity.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, if you think of something as simple today that we take for granted, like a simple concept like common sense, that's self-explanatory to you, right? You understand, what common sense is intuitively. You know what that is.
Right.
Common sense was like a 300-page book, right? Sensus Communis, Immanuel Kant. Like, before that simple concept came to be known by people broadly, it needed hundreds of pages of explanation, right? To unpack all the mechanics of it all, to explain the fact that there's a private sense. And what's a private sense?
Never heard of that.
Right, well, because now it's all contained in the concept.
Wow.
In that simple concept, you don't even need to unpack it. It's there.
Wow.
You don't have to start at the first principle. You don't have to start at the fact that, the private sense, right? The things that I think and feel that I never share in the public, right? That never come into public light. Well, that's always going to be. There's always going to be a private sense, but there's going to be a subset of my private thoughts and feelings and beliefs that I will put into the public, and that others will put accordingly into the public. And the things that are in common now form the common sense. It's a collection of these things that we each share from our private sense that, I digress, but it's an example. So you have to embrace that complexity, and mastery is really getting to a place where you understand that complexity simplistically, and you express it simplistically. And simple is going to that appointment without any of the bells and whistles. That's simple.
Yeah.
But underneath that is a whole great deal of complexity that went in for you to understand that that's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way to show up.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I forget to give it credit. I forget to give it credit. I oversimplify it in my mind as to, and I have to believe that's ego driven. The ego says, well, I'm that good. I'm that good. And it's not that. That's not what you are. You are brick by brick built to be masterful at something. It's not you were wired and born that good.
No, but people that are really good, that are masters at things, they make it look easy.
And that's the thing, right?
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
So from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, that looks pretty easy, but there's so much more that.
Yeah, and people could assume, and I've fallen into that trap of, if he or she can do it, I should be able to as well. But you're not giving credence to all the work that it took.
And the truth is that you can. You have equal potential.
Yeah.
Maybe not equal opportunity, but certainly equal potential, right?
Yeah.
It's just that is hard earned, hard fought, even if someone has more opportunity than another, even the person that had more opportunity had to work and fight real hard to get to that place. So I would say, if that person can do it, you can do it too. Nothing separates you from them, with the exception of dedication, persistence, commitment, repetition, care, right? Like enthusiasm, time, lots of time, lots of work. You can do it too. You can do all those things. But are you willing to? Are you prepared to? Or are you going to try to find a shortcut?
Yeah, I love hearing that, because I also believe now, as I get older and hopefully more humble, is that a lot of that came from outworking people. I would outwork people.
Yes.
I think I would work. When in Napa Valley for a while, I was the #1 agent for I don't know how many years.
Still are.
Yeah, no, not like the way that some of these producers are producing. I mean, we have people. I just ran into a friend the other day at the grocery store. She just turned 70 years old, and it's Sid. Probably shouldn't have said her name, but anyways, I'm going to bleep her name out. But I ran into her, and I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm doing it peripherally now, as I mentioned to you earlier, and having the time of my life. I have the privilege.
You've earned it.
Earned the privilege to do this business peripherally and having the time of my life with it now.
And once in a while you get into the weeds.
Absolutely. Once in a while I'm called into the weeds. Or sometimes drug in. But I run into this person who's a good friend of mine. She's been doing it for 20 years, but the last 6, 7, 8 years she's been just destroying it in sales volume. Just numbers that I'd never even dreamed of. She just does by doing a third of the transactional volume that I would do.
Higher price points.
Our average price point is probably $5 or $6 million.
Sold Robin. That's nice.
Oh yeah, she sold Robin Williams' house right after he passed. After he was passing, and she gets to play in that space. But we were having a nice moment, and she's probably thinking, okay, I'm 70 now. How much more do I need? And is this a lot of fun still? And she wasn't saying it as if she's miserable doing this, but you start to question, do you want to keep doing this, or is your family and other things where you want to spend most of your time?
Well, I'll tell you, mastery, getting to a place of mastery is getting to a place of disillusion. And
tell me more about that.
And so I see that a lot in masters, right?
Yeah.
I see it so
she
often.
Clearly is a master.
She's a master.
She's a master.
Yeah. I see so often in masters that exact thing, that exact dynamic where, you get to the top of the mountain, like you climb your Everest, right? Yes. And you're like, I mean, I guess it's kind of nice. Now what?
Yeah.
You become really, really disillusioned because there's like no mountain left to climb, right? There's no higher peak.
Does that have to do with identity?
I think certainly it does have to do with identity. It has to do with ego, and ego isn't. We talk about ego nowadays like it's like the worst thing ever. Yeah. It's not. I
don't see it as
it's an essential ingredient in your psychology, and understanding your ego and having a healthy relationship with it is important. Making sure that it's not the thing driving the car at all times is important, but it's still there to serve you and yours and those around you. But yeah, I do find that people that reach the summit, there's that moment of exhilaration, and in our careers that's expressed in terms of like years. It's like, oh wow, these last few years have been exhilarating, but now even I've become such a master that it's so rinse repeat. I do this in my sleep. The challenge is gone, therefore the adventure is gone, therefore the thrill is gone, therefore I'm not responding emotionally to the things that I'm doing anymore.
Right.
It's become very rinse repeat, very mechanical.
Yeah.
And it's whenever humans start to feel robotic that they start questioning everything, even their incredible success. So I always see folks in real estate, like tech founders, that get to that kind of place, and there's everything feels kind of the same now, and I'm not having the same growth that I had before. I'm not learning as much as I was learning before.
Right.
I'm not feeling the emotional
Right.
thing as much as I was before. So maybe for me to feel something, I have to light it all on fire.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to see. I just like want to see it burn.
Oh my God, I can relate to that.
Yeah, you can relate to that, right? Like, it's like I just want to see it burn. Because you try to think what will. It's all addictions, right? Everything.
You're making me think about gamblers. The feeling is almost the same as when they grab the chips and as when they're being taken away. It's almost the same.
It's the same, exactly. It's why even the loss,
adrenaline, right?
Even the loss is satisfying.
Yes,
People,
yeah.
And like sometimes they chase the loss. Like it's not enough that they have more money than they. It's not having the money or the means. It's about the feeling.
Wow.
We'll pay a lot of money for those feelings.
Yeah.
We'll do a lot of things, and it's the same feeling with eating that food as it is like being successful at that thing you set your mind to, or doing those drugs. It's like gets you to the same place. It's just a question of what gets you for people. It's like what gets you there faster, for how much.
Yeah,
that's when we start to get logical about it.
Yeah,
right. That's when we start to get logical. So, but I see that in masters all the time. This great disillusionment. I think disillusionment is a good thing. It's an enlightening thing because disillusionment is truth. Right?
Could that be what happened to Tiger Woods or something like that?
Absolutely.
Just
absolutely.
And then coming back.
Yeah, it's like people are exactly. It's just you get to this place where there's nothing left for me. You light it all on fire like Tiger did.
Yeah.
And then only then do you gain real perspective and really understand the truth.
And what matters.
And what matters.
Right?
Yeah, the truth. For me, what matters is the truth, right? Like that's my religion. Is like, what is the truth of the matter? And truth is both absolute, universal, and specific, and it's also relative and sort of a spectrum. Like there are truer truths. There are less true truths. Yeah. It's a complex thing, but yeah, I see a lot in folks like yourself and other masters that they get to this point and they're like, what's left? Yeah. And so I always say, okay, well, find your next summit. Like what is that? And that doesn't have to be necessarily have to be like I'm going to go and do this other business thing or this other whatever real estate thing. You mentioned it before. I could become. I'm going to go and be like the best family person. I'm going to be the best husband. Yeah, that's what I'm going to master next. Yeah. Being an incredible husband, but bringing the same energy and enthusiasm and commitment to that you did to the other things that you did. Yeah.
Interesting.
When I was first doing philosophy, my first 2 years of studying philosophy were incredible. I was incredibly depressed because everything that I had believed was by default, right, was instilled in me by my parenting, by the education system. None of it was ever questioned. It was all memorized and committed to memory, right? No, this is what the world is. This is who I am. This is what matters. This is what doesn't. And then you start being taught how to question all of it. And the first 2 years of those 4 years was tearing everything that I believed to be true down, and then rebuilding it all back up again from first principles. And when you do that, it's a very deliberate process where, okay, my first principle is this specific thing. And then that means that from that follows these three things, and from that follows these things, and from that follows that thing. And you have to spend a lot of time remembering who you now are, who you now want to be, and reminding yourself over and over and over again. And that's the process I went through. And for many years, I was super vocal, all those around me, about those things. And because I had to be for it. I had to make it my new nature before it became second nature.
Right.
And today, if you were to ask me about that specific those categorical imperatives, those things I categorized, held as sacrosanct and true and unyielding. I, for the life of me, could not tell you. I could not sit down and recount what those are, even after having years, even after years of memorizing them and repeating them.
And just putting it.
But now it's become so second nature that I embody and manifest them. I don't need to remember the reasons why I believe the things that I believe. I just believe.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need to remember why my opinion is that.
They're just part of you.
Follows from my values, and my values are my values. So it's a much more interesting way to experience life. It's a more accepting way, and it's a more open way where you're less you're less categorical, meaning you're more open to new categories.
I find that when I had an executive assistant for 5 years, his name was Danny Lau. Danny, birth name was Chuk To Lau, from China. Came to Napa when he was 15 years old. He happened to go to the same Catholic school that my son went into in high school. So it's funny that, Danny had, I would imagine, the privilege that his parents could afford to send him and his sister to the U.S. to go to high school. But I find that he and I have a lot in common because as I left my house when I was 15 years old, Danny was shipped away when he was 15 years old. But even more challenging than me, he didn't speak the language at 15 years old. So he had to navigate that by himself. And he lived with a real nice family that I happen to know, where we lived with a real nice family here. And then we saw Danny, build from a non-English speaking Chinese young man to who he is today. But who he is today is he graduated, then he went to Davis. He got his degree out of UC Davis, and then went to work as an auditor for the city of San Francisco. And I found myself desperate for an executive assistant, and he happened to be at this little house up in the front here. That was the house where Danny. Where I walked in one night from work, and we happened to be living there. And I walked in, he was talking to Jerry Jr., and I said, "Danny, can you help me? Whatever they're paying you, I'll pay you more. Come work for me." And he did. And then he got his real estate license, and then he started to try to do real estate. But as I was watching Danny move through life, and part of it could have been his upbringing, part of it could have been China, he was super rational and robotic, and an auditor, so very engineer-minded, and this and that. And we would send Danny to meet with clients. Everybody loved them, but nobody would transact with Danny.
Couldn't connect.
Couldn't align. He literally couldn't align. Yeah. And it was fascinating. And I would sit down and spend hours talking to Danny, and I would tell him all. And I don't have any background in psychology or anything like that. But Danny would say, I would say to Danny, the day that you can go from selling from here to selling from here, everything's going to change. So then Danny moved on, because he moved out of Napa. He lives out in Woodland now, bought a house in Woodland, and moved on and started working for a company over there. All of a sudden, he turned that on, and I can see that he started selling from the heart. And then it was so sweet when he asked me to write him a recommendation for 30 Under 30, and he was one of the 30 Under 30s. Right? So Danny went from, when he was 24 years old, I hired him here, went through 5 years of sort of watching me do real estate, to me as a sort of mentoring coach, beating my head into the wall because he just couldn't transact. But it was all in the going from here to here. And when he finally connected, 30 Under 30, and he's killing it in volume. I mean, he's doing a lot of business. I think so much goes to that, is when we actually have the ability to just drop the guard.
Yeah, to just be ourselves, right? And just focus on expressing ourselves and manifesting ourselves, and being heart forward in that way. That is the beginning of mastery, right? It's the beginning of mastery. It's taking the training wheels off.
And now you know, and,
Yeah.
and he's one of those guys. Uh, it reminds me of my son and my daughter-in-law who are moving really into mastery right now. You know they're going to be okay. You know, as a mentor, as a father, you're like, wow.
Yes.
You just know they. I love when you said training wheels. Their training wheels are off. They're going to be fine.
They're riding on their own.
They're riding on their own.
They're riding on their own.
Riding on their own.
You know, and great. You know, they'll wobble here and there, maybe take a spill, but it's not gonna kill. Like they're gonna be all right.
Yeah,
they've got it handled.
That's really good.
They really do, but that's, you know, we grow up with training wheels, right?
Yeah.
Mental training wheels, like, okay, believe these things, believe those things.
Yeah.
You know, be this way, don't be that way. We don't necessarily question why or understand fully. We just sort of are following a set of instructions, and there's no mastery in that, right?
No.
Taking the training wheels away, taking the instructions away,
Yeah.
that's the beginning of mastery. It's like, okay, now you get creative with it. You author your own reality.
Yeah.
Right. And you just go out into the world in that way, and without the dogma, without the categorization, without the everything has to be this way or it's not. I see, you know, with a lot of people that I know that are successful as well, and ones that aren't, it doesn't, you know, it applies equally, is you sort of start to think of yourself by virtue of, like, you think about who you are by thinking about what you do and what you have. And so it's like your whole life can be expressed in a list of things.
Yeah.
It's like, and you with Danny, you were sort of going through that. You're like, oh, okay, he's this, he's that, this is, you know, who he is what he does. He's you know, he does numbers and accounting and whatever. It's we think about ourselves as what we do, and like what we don't do, and that's what genuinely defines us and how we define ourselves. And my thing is, that's not a great way by which to grow as a person or experience life in its fullest, because it's really judgmental, right? Mm-hmm. It's really judgmental. You're gonna have, you're gonna begrudge life because you had a list when you were 15 that said by 30 you would have a certain car, or you'd have a certain amount of money, or you'd have a certain amount of whatever. And if you haven't checked that thing,
I'll have to call Danny, because I bet you he has that list.
He has that list. For
I bet you he does.
You know, like,
100%.
He has. So many of us do.
Danny,
I started that way. I started with that list, right? I'm like, okay, because we don't know any better. We need the training wheels, right? We need that. It's like, we need that. We start there. It's a question of, do you stay there? Do you get beyond?
Yeah. And
what I learned, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, is that you're not what it is you do. You're not what it is you have. You are how you do what you do.
Yeah.
That's who you really are.
Yeah.
You are how you are. Who you are is how you relate to others, right? It's how you do the things you do. It's not the actual things themselves. And so in that respect, it doesn't matter what your job or profession is.
Yeah.
Do you bring yourself to it fully, creatively, expressively, enthusiastically? Do you apply yourself? Right? Do you build? Do you create more than there was before? Right? Do you put a little bit of a dent in the thing that, is the world in your life? Do you serve others? Do you serve yourself? Doesn't matter what the work is, the esteem you attach to it, the ego component of it, the perception of others, that stuff, who cares? Doesn't matter. You could have the fanciest, most prestigious job in the world, and if you don't bring yourself to it in a particular way, if how you do is different than what you do, if it's not consistent, you're not going to be successful at it for very long. And if you might be okay at it, you might skate by, might get by, but you'll never get to that place of mastery. That only comes from choosing to, whatever it is you're doing, doesn't matter what, choosing to do it in a fully expressed, committed, applied kind of way.
Wow.
That's really, if there's like one secret to life, in my opinion, it's you've got to burn the boats. Like you
got to burn the boats.
You've got to burn the, like, if this is the thing that you're doing, then no going back. Give it your all.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Give it your heart.
Yeah.
Right? Give it your energy, your creativity.
Yeah.
Be the very best at it, no matter what the profession or the role. Just if you look at Side as an example, our company, there are people within that company that have very similar, there are lots of different roles of the same things. It's like 10 of this, 20 of that, 40 of this.
Yeah.
There's so much variance between people, even though the job's the same, the instructions are the same.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much variance in outcome. And that is entirely determined not by what people do, but by how they do it. Right?
Makes sense.
It's entirely determined by that.
Yeah.
So that's been a guiding light for me. It's like I'm a switch about what I do, not a dial. I'm not like going to like be 10% into a thing.
Yeah.
I'm either going to be
on
or off. I'm either going to bring everything I've got to it, or
it's kind of like the thing that it's like the thing that I told the other day. It's either a hell yes from me or a fuck no.
Or fuck yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hell yes or fuck no.
Yeah. Go to the extremes.
Yeah, I love that.
Go to the extremes on those things. It's like no half measures. Half measures is death.
Yeah.
Not physical death.
Yeah, but it's death.
Practical death.
Yeah.
It's all compromise. It's all mediocrity. And you know what? That's okay too. It's okay too if you're conscious of it, aware of it, decide to choose it deliberately and accept it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that.
Right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you are in that place and you don't want to be, if you are in that place and you don't realize you are, you're not aware of it, then that's death. That's death.
That's death.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's death. Yeah, you grow or you decline. And it's just the question of what growth do you choose for yourself.
I've always said that about my weight. I've always said I'm either going up or going down. Staying the same is a nightmare.
Yeah, not possible.
Staying the same is almost not possible. I mean, it's
I don't know how.
It's gonna. Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know how. I think you have a few more minutes and go into that a little bit because I think from a cerebral standpoint, I feel more mental clarity than I probably have in my entire life right now. And I think it's possibly because of the way that I'm eating.
No question.
Yeah.
I remember when I was, just a couple of years ago in the pandemic, I definitely felt at my quickest, sharpest. It's not to say that that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's just that
it's another gear, right? It's like another gear.
That's very well said. Yeah. It's a gear up, right?
Like you have a 6-speed now. It was a 5-speed, but now you gave it a 6. And it can coast and it flows.
And it does so in a way that is so high energy and profound that it's like almost like a high.
It is a high.
Yeah.
It is a high.
It's a high. Yeah.
So, and that's why, when you said some of what you've said, I'm just fascinated by your intellect, and as a lot of people are, but I was just thinking, wow, yeah, like when you went through the pandemic, you've already felt that, and you already know what that's like, and it's like, wow, I'd do anything to help you get there. So just know that, man. I've always said it.
Uh,
I'm here. I'm always
yeah,
here.
but you know what? I think what you know is that it's got to be
It's got to be
you.
you.
It's got to be
It's
you.
got to be you.
It's got
Yeah.
to be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard for me. The challenge is that I understand all of that academically, and I know the difference, and I've experienced and felt the difference. Um, but I do believe that each and every one of us has a certain amount of capacity to meet each and every day of our lives, and it becomes really challenging to make time, make capacity, right? Because it requires commitment, it
Oh,
requires stick-to-itiveness, persistence,
oh,
effort, energy. When you've committed the vast majority of your capacity to something else, especially when that something is much bigger than yourself.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And where you have obligations and the duty to others.
And you do.
And I
And
do,
I know
and
you do.
as you do as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And so that's where I struggle is uh, things will get so busy, so overwhelming, so intense, so all-consuming. There's so much going on all the time, and business and work and the relationships they're in, and to a point where, like, well, the easy thing to sacrifice is my own life, my personal
That's
stuff.
well said. Yeah.
Right. That's like
That's the easiest thing.
that's the easy, because the only person that I'm beholden to there is myself.
You're not disappointing those people.
Exactly. And I am wired to please. I'm a pleaser by nature.
Yeah.
So you're really up against your biology in that way. You really are. And so my thing, the only thing that's ever worked for me is changing the structure of the environment, and that's where I've been feeling super deficient and even helpless over the last years, not being able to do that.
All right, so Susan and I are coming over. We're coming over. I'm joking. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking. I think if you give us permission to come over, just literally just do our thing for one day, just come over and make suggestions. There's nothing, maybe give us the key to the cupboards. So let us in the cupboards and the refrigerator. Give us permission to discard anything we see, but just changing the environment, because I think you've already said that if your environment, it was different, something, I know that you have to go out and eat, and I know that you meet with a lot of people. That's kryptonite.
That's the pernicious thing.
That's kryptonite right there. That's kryptonite.
That's what else, it's like kryptonite.
That's kryptonite. That's my kryptonite, is family going out to great bougie restaurants. That's just so much fun, and you equate all that. I mean, your company just took me out to an amazing lunch with Casey the other day, and Casey and Susan had a glass of wine, and it was
steak.
Oh God, yes, they ate good calamari. I mean,
a little side salad, please.
That was me. That was me.
Some balsamic vinegar.
Absolutely, and lemon. That was me.
Hold the salt, no oil.
No salt, no oil, and they did it for me, and I had an amazing time. But you know the only reason I had an amazing time? Because I made it over the hump.
Yes.
The hump is 2 to 3 months. And once you make it over the hump, once you give it that 2 to 3 months, then it's less, it calls at you, it pulls at you less.
And you get satisfaction from, I think, discipline.
I got a lot of satisfaction. The restaurant was accommodating. They just did the boiled pasta. I had pasta, but I'm not having pasta right now because I want to break this plateau that I'm in.
Yep.
So right now I'm not having nuts, avocados, or pasta.
Nothing high calorie. Yeah.
Nothing high, thank you. Chef AJ says it is left of the red line. The red line is anything that is 600 calories per pound or under or 600 calories per pound is the red line.
Yeah.
Anything over 600 calories per pound, which is avocados, nuts, then it goes into pastas, then it goes
Yes.
well, no, pastas are allowed, but she says if you want to lose weight, cut the pastas out because they're so processed. So stay with the sweet potatoes, with the other things.
Yeah.
And I can teach you how to make all that stuff taste amazing with balsamic vinegar. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
make them taste with flavored balsamic vinegars that are delicious.
Yeah. The thing that, where it becomes really challenging is, okay, well, at home there's some semblance of control, but if you came in to empty out my fridge, you'd be emptying out nothing.
Because there's
nothing in my fridge.
That's fair.
Right?
So I'm coming in to stock your fridge, and I'm going to stock
everything. Yeah, delete my DoorDash app is what you have to do.
Delete that. DoorDash is awful. The food makes it to you cold half the time. It's a disappointment most of the time.
It is not good.
It's a disappointment.
It is not good. It's always a disappointment, but the convenience of it all, right?
I lived it.
And so, I choose to, I make my compromises I like to think that I make my compromises deliberately. Like, okay, I'm going to just compromise here so I don't have to compromise there.
Yeah.
But there's, it's a fallacy to think that you have to compromise at all.
Do you think there's a point when you get to a place, let's say with the one primary company that you're working with right now, I know you have things going on with other companies. I don't have to talk about that, but I'm assuming you have other things going on. You've been involved in a lot of things over the years. But I know where your heart is right now, and I know where you're at. I know.
And my time.
And your time.
It's entirely side.
It's huge. So side is a big part of it, 99% of it.
I would say so.
Right?
Yeah.
So do you think that and I think I have an idea from the outside what it takes to get something like that to get to where you want it to get? And you've done it before.
Yep.
So this is something that you're experienced at. But do you think that when that happens, then you would take that moment to put the mask on yourself?
Yeah, I think, I believe that it's not beyond reach and it's possible, and it requires putting on that proverbial mask and keeping it on and committing to doing so, and that anything beyond that is compromise, is excuse. I recognize that.
Yeah, I know you know that.
Yeah, I recognize.
You're not the guy that anybody needs to tell you what you're not doing. Yeah, nobody needs to sit here.
Yeah, we beat ourselves up plenty
all the time.
And we know we're not ignorant to it. We know it intimately.
Yeah.
And so my fear, of course, is that I only put on that mask when I have no other choice, when I get to that crossroad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm 39 years old now, right? Yeah. I'll be 40 in 6 months.
Yeah. That might be a crossroad. Maybe when you hit 40, you go, oh shit.
I mean, I'm feeling like I'm kind of there right now, right? But
hence 40 is still a baby, but
that's actually a fear of mine. I don't want to get.
Yeah.
I've got to the crossroads, and that's what's forcing me into making more time, right? Not finding it, because you can never find it. Right? Making the time, making the priority, making the commitment. I would hate for that to be because I had no other choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's certainly today, from my vantage point, feeling like that's the trajectory. That I'm only going to do that once I'm forced into deciding to have like a life that is supported by prescription medication, which, thankfully I do not do it all or touch it all today, or one that is, more aligned to the natural rhythm of how we all are supposed to be and should be.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew of a way to, because the hardest part is starting. It's just like with startups, with founding a company. I talk to like aspiring entrepreneurs, people that haven't necessarily started a thing yet, and like, where do I go? Where do I start? What do I do? Like, man, the hardest part is that first step.
Bridging the gap. the financial gap, bridging, all this stuff that has to happen, pulling resources.
They think really far ahead, they get overwhelmed. And it's like, no, the hardest thing is step one, right? Like, it's taking the first step. And it's the same with this. It's like, that's the hardest thing for me. It's that same step. It's that first step. That's really, really, really.
I really connect with the fact when when you're saying that it's really you, because man, it's a thing that when I'm not ready, I'm not ready, man. I can have I have plenty of friends who are trainers, who are marathon runners, who are ultra runners.
Yeah. You have the means. Like,
oh, absolutely. There's excuses. There are not any.
Yeah.
Reasons as to why, there's a million. I mean, reasons as to why, and it's brutal. And right now my kids are living at my house because they're remodeling their house. So I have this last month or two, they're going to leave in about a week. So it's bittersweet because they're living in a week. So now the house won't be as cluttered with little things and little toys and little things like that my OCD kind of goes, but the warmth and the joy of having them there is so sweet. But the scariest part about them being there is that all the food that the kids eat and all that stuff is out there, so my environment is really, really disrupted. And the only reason why I've been able to hold it together, I believe, is because I'm almost a year into this. If this would have happened the first month, I would have just caved right in.
And that's why my other challenge is I can find the will to start anything.
Yeah.
That's
the
hardest thing is starting, first step.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a place where that's second nature.
Yeah.
I can, let's go.
Well, right? if you and I are in any way alike, I'm going to imagine is that the most exhilarating time in any project is that beginning.
I love a beginning.
Oh, fuck.
I love the beginning.
Oh, God. Give me beginnings over and over.
Yeah, endings are a little sad. I love a good beginning. I really do. It could be addicting too, the beginning.
It's addicting, man.
Yeah. It really, really is. That's so astute.
Yeah.
But where were we just going with that?
I'm kind of stuck on the beginning. Beginnings are awesome.
So I'm okay with beginnings, and I'm good beginning again. But it'll be a Monday, and I'll have a great beginning that day. Okay, good. I had 8 last week. I ate really perfectly clean.
Yeah. Those are those good days. Yeah.
Great. It's a great day. Great day. Tuesday comes around. I've got a lunch at this Peruvian place with this person I haven't seen in a while who I
love that.
Love
that food.
Right. Love that food. And it's like, okay, now it's an end.
Yeah.
We ended. It was a very short chapter.
Oh.
And that's what becomes exhausting, is like you put in the energy to start.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
And it's a false start.
Yeah.
And then again, and it's a false start.
I can relate to that. 100%.
And it's again, and it's a false start.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the structural thing is so important, to sustain the start.
Yeah.
Right. To have enough oxygen to feed it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, where can I find a lull in my life where I'm not, it's not a typical week of lunches and dinners and people and social, and that's what can be hard. That doesn't make it impossible, but it's certainly, if life is a game, it increases the difficulty level.
So I'm asking you this question because I'm curious, not because I'm judging. Judging
is okay.
Yeah. But definitely not coming from a bad place. Where is, I think I've struggled a lot with self-love.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot more than I can probably quantify. But is that a part of it? Is that a part in it, do you think, for you or for me or for people struggling with this? That how do we put ourselves above side?
Yeah. It's a super profound kind of question, because I'm not sure exactly where to start even thinking about it. I don't think that I necessarily eat from a place of self-loathing.
Yeah.
I think I eat from a place of self-soothing. Uh,
That would be me. That
yeah,
would be soothing. But when I'm saying
yeah.
self-love, because now at 56 years old, and hopefully this maybe helps, but I look at myself at 56 years old, I look at my body and I look at what I've done to it.
Tell me about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I look at what I've done to it. I look at when things are regressing and going back in the shape that I'm probably supposed to be, or closer towards that, is the damage that I've done. And then, you start wondering how much damage have I done inside, which is really what matters ultimately. So that's what I mean, self-love in that place of, because, I have all the reasons as to, raising 4 kids, starting companies,
Yep.
doing this, working graveyard to export product to Japan, and doing all those insane things that I was doing in my 20s.
Yeah, you sacrificed yourself. That's not very loving.
Right. That's kind of what I mean.
Yeah, I for me, that wasn't a deliberate thing. It just sort of happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way I eat is the way I grew up eating, and it just so happened that once I reached a certain age and I wasn't playing sports all the time anymore and in the gym all the time anymore, like the eating stayed the same, but everything else changed.
As fair.
Right? So, and today I think my mind, thinks soothing is love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's really good because it's true.
And that's my big challenge is, it's like for me loving myself is like eating whatever the hell I want to.
Yeah.
And it's not true, but that's how
But you're soothing.
That's how I'm wired.
And you're keeping it all together because that's a thing that helps you cope.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily drug or alcohol and what other vices that are out there. We use food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
it's the one thing that environmentally we can't get away with not having.
Not in this world.
Not in this world. Maybe in another world when that happens.
Like in the hour and a half it took me to get here today, how many like Starbucks and McDonald's and
Dunkin' Donuts, everything's just,
and Taco Bell's that drive through. I'm like, I haven't I haven't eaten today. Should I just like stop real quick and get something on the way to Jerry's? And I did, and I'm like, no, I'll fast. I'll have a fast day.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I remember those drives from San Francisco in the middle of the night. I do drive-thrus through. I would think that a teriyaki bowl at Jack in the Box was a healthy food. That was a healthy choice.
They want you to think that.
They want you to think that. People think sushi is healthy. And sushi is the fast food of Japan. It's fast food.
It is fast food.
It's not healthy.
No.
It's sugar. It's pure sugar in your system.
It's pure sugar.
Pure sugar.
I love it.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good. We have Muramoto's here, man. It doesn't get much better than Muramoto's. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's really great. So it's, it's a challenging dynamic to deal with for myself. We all have our cross to bear.
Yeah.
That's certainly mine. It's the one thing in my life that I felt like, if this is the one thing I could put under control, everything out, like all of a sudden everything will be perfect.
And I don't think that's
not true.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't. Nothing's ever that way. And here's what this. Let me warn you if it hasn't happened before, because there's one time where I got like thin back to when I was a teenager. I got really thin as a guy in his 40s. I was able to lose all this weight, and I still didn't look like Tom Cruise, or I didn't look like Brad Pitt. It was really disappointing because, we're fed these images of what's ideal, and it wasn't that. So, body dysmorphia is a whole other topic we can get into on another one, but it's that's real for me. That's real for me.
I couldn't honestly say it isn't. It's not a real thing for me. It totally is. Yeah. And it perpetuates the challenge. Yeah. Right?
But by the way, I also have to say that I have such a big ego that even when I'm at my heaviest, I think I'm still pretty good looking.
And you are. You're handsome.
Oh, well, but come on. I mean, I think I'm better looking than I am. It's a crazy, weird thing with the body.
That's like most people. Though.
Okay. Yeah, I think most people are good. Oh my God.
Yeah. I got this.
When I jump on the scale and the scale tells me opposite, it says, "Oh no, that can't be good looking."
No. Yeah, but
That survivalist confidence.
that's part of it. It's also pathology. It's just like it's avoidance.
Avoidance.
Right? We don't want to confront the uncomfortable and like the depressing and the painful. We want to, it's flight or fight. And
well, that's that's why artists out there that are extremely overweight want to look at the beauty in that, and I can respect that. Emotionally, I can respect that. Intellectually, I know we're not healthy. I know we're not where we want to be. Like somebody said the other day, even for those people that are very comfortable in their skin, no matter at what size, and they put that out there that you could be healthy at 100 pounds overweight or more, that you can be healthy that way. Even if you went to those people and you said, if I gave you a light switch that you can just hit and it all come off, none of them were going to stay the way they are.
Of course not. It's all rationalization. Yeah, it's all pathology. It's just how we're wired, right?
Yeah, we're wired that way.
We're wired that way. We're wired that way, and even if you understand that you're wired that way, it doesn't necessarily mean you can do anything about it.
100%.
Because it's a dance partner, and it has a will of its own. You may want to go this way; it'll take you that way.
That's a fair assessment. Yeah, right? You think you're moving right along and chugging, and all of a sudden, the wheels come off.
It's got a will and a mind of its own. It's got its own agency.
Yeah. Can you just define agency for me, or can you help me understand that word?
The ability to self-determine. To agency being like I have the capacity to say, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, and here's what I'm going to do to get there. I'm going to go and get there.
Okay, got it. I hear the word being used a lot now.
Yeah. So the ability to self-determine. So it's like within you, it's not just singular agency. It's not like your ego has agency, your super ego has agency. Your id. Not that Freud is a very accurate way to think about this, but all those parts within you have their own agency, and then it's a question of who's in the driver's seat, what's their relationship to one another, how are they aligned? Are you aligned internally? Do you have an internal consistency? So I, for example, have a great internal consistency in mind, but I don't have any of it in body.
Interesting. Right? And then you watch those people that are running around 8% body fat and just get it.
A lot of them have a great internal consistency in body, but maybe not in mind.
You see it. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
And then you find those rare folks that have it all over the place. And you're like,
freaking unicorn. Yeah, freaking unicorn. Yeah,
divinity. It's divinity.
Yeah.
It's a real divine. Yeah. It's a real divine expression of humanity.
Yeah.
Like that's where godliness is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it is, and I never hope to, or be someone that's got like a Brad Pitt physique or whatever. Certainly, if you gave me a light switch to flip and I could have that,
why not?
Great. Why not? But I'm at peace with that. It's less about that. It's more about well-being and health and energy.
That's where it's at for me now at this age. I would say when I was 30, it definitely was more about the superficial aspect of looking good. A little shame goes with that now, but now it's definitely about health and longevity.
I'm very fortunate that I've, for some time, for a long time, I have had like a winning personality. It makes up for a lot of my flaws, and I think a lot of that is born from the fact that I wasn't always overweight. So you have perspective and different kind of experience. But I've often said, well, not often, but I've talked to my therapist.
Yeah.
I have a therapist I see once every couple of weeks.
Yeah, we all have them on speed dial. Not your same one, but we all have some of those people.
He's not on speed dial. He really requires me to schedule well ahead of time, but unfortunately,
that's great.
It's got too many boundaries. That one.
That's funny. Smart therapist.
Yeah, smart therapist. But I'll talk to him about this, and I'll say, I think one of my challenges is that the incentive is very internal, because the incentive for me to get healthy is me feeling right right within myself and with myself. it's not external. It's not, oh, I can't get a date, or
right.
I've been, I'm fortunate enough that uh, that is not a problem or a challenge. I almost wish it were,
Yeah.
because that would
Give you motivation.
lend so much motivation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you could tie it to a basic need, an instinct.
Yeah.
So yeah, I almost wish it were.
Yeah.
But alas, so you have to find it in other ways, and you have to be a bit more elevated about it. So, like, so that it's not motivated by some basic compulsion, like, oh, I got to do it this. I have to go do this because my love life won't be there otherwise. I have to go do this because otherwise it's a heart attack or diabetes or prescription drugs. Like, those are the forcing functions that typically get us to make these big changes. I'm like, where do I find that? How do I do that in a way that's just more that is entirely elevated? It doesn't require the forcing function.
And I think I'm connecting because I think you have I'm going to call it disadvantage of youth.
Relative youth.
Yeah, you're still young. Nothing hurts.
My vitals are great.
Yeah, everything's great. So yeah, I can understand that you don't feel the urgency at this point, because I didn't feel it in my 30s. Yeah, definitely not in my 30s, and well into my 40s. I didn't feel anything.
It's like, I'm good financially. I've got an amazing girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who, if you were to see us side by side, you'd never think we were in a relationship. Like, we just don't look like a couple at all whatsoever.
Funny. I would totally expect that from you.
That almost is like my motivation more than anything.
That's so
like,
sweet.
Man, but like, all those things are there,
and she's not smart. She's not smart at all either. Your girlfriend. I've just heard that she's brilliant.
Oh man, yeah.
I've heard that she's off the charts.
She gives me a run for my money.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
That's saying a lot.
She's incredibly bright.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, she's also incredibly accepting. She's like, "You're fine the way you are, man."
My wife is the same way.
Yeah, I'm not bothered with it. Like, why are you bothering yourself with it? Why are you tortured by it?
Susan's the same way.
Like, because I want to show up for you better, for myself. Like, you don't have to show up.
So sweet. No, it's
like, I wish you were slapping me around more.
But that wouldn't work for us either. We don't do good.
I haven't even written you into my will yet. If I pass away, you gotta at least make sure I get to it. You get there. And then,
oh my God.
And then you don't have to care about my well-being and health at all, because you're disincentive. But I've very seldom in the last 10 years, decade. In the last decade, felt helplessness about anything, and this is a thing I feel helplessness about. I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know if I can start again, stop again. Even if I start and go a long time, well, I just did that for a year and a half, and then I yo-yoed all the way back to where I was immediately. Yeah. So what's the point? Like, it's this internal dialogue that's really challenging.
I can depress you even more. It's only about 2% of the people that keep it off. And so it's a brutal statistic.
It's brutal.
And it scares the hell out of me.
That's brutal.
It's brutal.
Isn't that so scary for you?
It's so scary.
Like, you're just always on the edge, right?
It's so freaking scary.
It's so easy to relapse.
I've just connected with the only friend I have in all this is time. That's the only friend I have in this whole battle. Is the more time passes, it's almost like an alcoholic, that
it is.
They count the days and celebrate the time that has passed.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that makes it easier is time.
That's true. But they know even that one
catastrophe, one death in the family, it's really that simple.
That delicate.
It's really that delicate.
It's so delicate.
It's so delicate, and that's, I've told Edisham this in the past, and I've told statistically, I know from the day I hit wherever that goal is, which I'm not even clear because that's kind of a moving target. If you talk to different doctors, you should be this weight, that weight, this body mass, that body mass, how much body fat. We're trying to figure all that out. But let's say that I hit that ideal body weight. It's holding that for 2 years for you to have a better chance at not being that statistic of the 2%.
I mean, that's
or being that statistic of the 2%.
Yeah, it's like, and now back to where we began this conversation is, you think about all that ahead of time, and you're overwhelmed. It's daunting.
It's Mount Everest.
It's Mount, and you're like, okay.
It's Mount Everest. You look up,
like, do I even want to bother climbing this?
How many people have failed?
Because I know I'll either fail, die, or reach the summit and be disillusioned.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I would just someone be like, yeah.
But in you've already done things that defy statistics like that.
Yeah, I've climbed some mountains.
Yeah, climb things that not 2%. A fraction of a percent of people get to.
That's true, and that's back to the thing. Like, it's possible for everyone. It's equal possibility. Equal possibility. Equal possibility. But in business, life, weight, whatever, it's like all the things that go into
and timing of like when you, it's that crossroad, and I just hope that the crossroad is the intellectual crossroad rather than because for me it was the other crossroad. It was the blood pressure thing and possibly pre-diabetic and those kind of things finally. And now that I have a granddaughter, there's that incentive of, gosh, I think I want to be around when, I'm telling you, 10 years ago, I'm going to be totally honest, 10 years ago, I was okay to go whenever.
Yeah. Like,
10 years ago, I was like, I've raised my 4 kids. They're out of the house. I've had a great marriage, a great relationship. I've traveled. I've had a great life whenever. Now that kid came around and brings a light into the world that my wife and I hadn't felt before, and I see my wife with her, it changes everything. So I guess I'm agreeing with everything you've said, which is we kind of just come to that turn, right?
Yeah. And it's the question of, okay, like, now what? Here we are.
Yeah.
Now what? And that's a question I don't have an answer to just yet.
I can come over tomorrow.
Appreciate that.
Anytime, metaphorically, metaphorically or physically. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. It's about the structure.
Yeah. I'd love to help you with that.
Yeah.
I'd have fun with, because at the beginning. Yeah.
If I had, no commitments or obligations to others, what I would do would be very different than what I'm doing, right? What I would do is I would just, isolate myself in productive setting to detox and
go
through the withdrawals.
I believe you can do that. Yeah. I totally believe you can do that.
Maybe in December.
I believe you can do that in December. Now that you said it, I believe you. And I'll tell you what would be fascinating to me. I would pick the hardest time possible to do it at. I wouldn't pick the easy time. I like
that you play the game on the hardest difficulty settings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I did it right before Thanksgiving.
Better habits that way.
Oh, yeah. I did it before Thanksgiving, and then I had to go with my buddies to Super Bowl in Vegas. And I had to watch them pass the veal parmesan and drink the wine. 10 guys just having the time of their life, and I'm eating a green salad, but I pound down like 3 smoothies in the room, so I was full. But I was still salivating and in physical agony and pain sitting in that thing. It was a beast.
Just the smells.
It was a beast. It was a beast.
It's got like a mind of its own.
It was a beast.
Agency.
It had agency.
It had agency.
It had agency.
You have to fight with that. You get it, right?
Now I get it.
You're like, that's the agency.
That was agency. That had agency.
You're just like, stop. No, I'm not doing this. You're like,
yes.
What? Who is this? It's like my active mind is saying one thing, believing one thing, and alcohol doesn't have that on me. Some of these guys going to
like gentlemen's clubs. I don't need any of that. I don't find gambling. I don't find that much joy in going.
Same.
That doesn't have agency over me, right?
Yeah, same.
Is that fair?
Totally.
Okay.
Because we each have our cup of tea, right?
Right.
Different people compromise in different ways, right? We compromise with food. Some people compromise with drinks, with alcohol.
Yes.
Some people compromise with different kinds of drugs. Some compromise with gambling.
Some of my friends can't get off the table. I mean, you're watching these guys $2,000-$3,000 hands. They can't get off the table.
Yeah.
It's insane to watch.
In the way that we can't like put down that pint of ice cream till it's finished.
But that guy is thin as a needle. I mean, that guy has not a weight issue. Should we start gambling? Is that a thing?
You're just gonna find a new addiction, basically.
You gotta. And that's the thing, that it's really hard to start something without replacing it with something else. That makes it even harder.
Yeah, because you create a space in the void where something else was before.
People stop smoking cigarettes, they start vaping, or
Exactly. There's life is challenging that way, and we all compromise in different ways, and very few of us sort of are divine in how we manifest ourselves across the board. Very, very few of us are that way. Like it's probably 1% of 1% of 1% that are like that. But some of us some of us have better cups of tea than others. Like if your addiction is cups of tea or caffeine.
Yeah. Oh, I've been there too.
Yeah, that's better.
But it's better. But man, a guy that suffers from anxiety attacks
doesn't help you.
It's not good. I'm literally a different human being.
It probably is what causes the anxiety.
It causes more of the anxiety, absolutely. I can see Irish, I'm looking at the time because we're doing another podcast right after this one. It's 1 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
We're the longest podcast.
Has it been 2 hours?
Yeah. We're the longest podcast we've ever done.
Well, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, my God.
And we went everywhere.
And I'm just going to say, yeah, I've never taken this journey with anybody like I have with you, man. It was indulgent. It was really amazing, bro.
I could do this all day.
Oh, dude. Oh, we got to do this. I hope you do it again. I hope you do it again. We can go. Irisham and I will go set up wherever you are.
You should come to where I am, and we can set up with the ocean behind us.
Oh, Irisham's not saying no. Irisham loves new experiences, man. He's already.